Just before we get started with this video, I want to say that it's brought to you by me, or rather another channel I do called Business Plays. It's about business, but it's not boring, I hope. It looks at the most epic failures and times things went wrong, but also little known successes, generally just the weirdest stuff that I could find from the business world. And I know when I say business world, everyone thinks that's going to be dull, but I promise it's not boring and it's slightly insane, if that would be the right word to use. There is a link below. Go check it out and let me know what you think. Let them know Simon sent you. Celebrity impersonators are nothing new, and with the odd exception, the majority of them fail to measure up to the talent or skill of the person they're trying to emulate. The same cannot be said of me, the most amazing Simon Whistler impersonator there is. Or, also, Vickie Jones, a singer who sounded so much like Aretha Franklin that a judge tasked with deciding whether or not she was illegally impersonating the legendary Queen of Soul more or less shrugged and let her get away with it because neither he nor anyone else in the court at the time could tell the difference between Jones and the Real McCoy. Wait, so that sounds exactly like she's an incredible impersonator. Born Mary Jane Jones, Mary adopted the stage name of Vickie Jones when she began performing soul music in some rather seedy nightclubs in the 1960s. As to why the stage name, Jones was a deeply religious woman and a respected member of a local church choir, the Great Gate in West Petersburg, Virginia, which is how she earned a living with her cut of donations from performances when the choir toured around. At the time, Jones was a single mum, lacking even a high school education, with her first husband, who she married at 19, sadly having died and left her with a 1-year-old son to take care of. Shortly thereafter, she married again and had 3 boys with her new husband, who unfortunately proved to be a violent alcoholic, with Jones ultimately leaving him to escape the abuse. Unsurprisingly, from all of this, she was barely scraping by and needed an alternate source of income that she could earn while her boys were sleeping. Thus, she turned to singing at various clubs, earning about $10 per performance, which is about $80 today, singing the devil's music. To further help ensure nobody discovered what she was doing lest she be ostracized, Jones performed in a giant wig while wearing an excessively flamboyant dress. Despite her efforts to hide her side hustle as a soul singer in smoky nightclubs, the head of the aforementioned Great Gate Choir, and I'll just mention here the number of times I've stumbled across Great Gate, is extraordinary. Anyway, this Reverend Billy Lee, he did eventually find out what she was up to after hearing a rumor and sneaking into a club she was performing at to see for himself. That sounds like the perfect excuse for the fact that he was probably just at one of these nightclubs and saw her perform. However, knowing she needed the money to put food on the table for her children and being extremely impressed by her performance, the good Reverend chose not to out her to the local church. He did, however, worry about her safety at clubs like that without any sort of escort, stating when she goes into these situations, things could get out of hand. Actually, this Reverend sounds like a really good guy. I take it back what I said about him. But he decided to quote him, "Don't lecture her, don't preach to her," which is a little bit strange. He is a reverend after all. Isn't preaching literally what he does? He simply prayed that she'd be alright, occasionally clandestinely going to her shows in case she got into trouble, though he states she never knew he was there. Sounds like your faith in prayer wasn't up to scratch, Reverend. As to how she became such a great singer, Jones stated, "I don't know one note from the next. What talent I got from God." The Reverend Lee concurred, stating, "I had to teach most of the folk in my groups, but that was one young lady I did not have to teach soul." He further went on that given all she'd been through in her life, soul music was a perfect fit for her, recounting a time he saw her singing "Comfort Me" by Shirley Caesar with tears flowing from her eyes. The song was about going through trials and tribulations. She felt that song. As for how she came to be such a fan of Aretha Franklin, Jones saw a kindred spirit in the Queen of Soul. Both were singers of church choirs, both had been in abusive relationships, they were the same age and had otherwise similar backgrounds, etc. Jones's love of Franklin, coupled with her singing ability, naturally saw her fold a number of Franklin's biggest hits into her repertoire of songs, with Jones usually bookending performances with a Franklin song, which was always a crowd pleaser. This all culminated in a performance in January of 1969, which would change her life forever. While performing at the Pink Garter, Jones, as she'd done many times before, performed the Franklin staple, Respect. Her spot on imitation of Franklin was witnessed by a fellow performer that night, 24-year-old Lavel Hardy. Hardy was a rather successful James Brown impersonator who, on the side, occasionally attempted to pass himself off as the Real McCoy when he could get away with it. Hardy later approached Jones and told her that he was slated to tour with the actual Aretha Franklin in Florida and that he wanted to book Jones as an opening act in the shows. Jones initially refused Hardy's offer, not because she didn't believe him, but rather because she quite literally didn't have enough money for the bus fare to get to Florida. However, after Hardy explained that Jones would be paid $1,000, about $8,000 today, for a stretch of 6 nights of performing with the Queen of Soul, she took out a loan with a local moneylender for the price of a bus ticket. When Jones arrived in Florida without a penny to her name, however, Hardy explains that he had been lying and that she wouldn't be opening for Franklin at all, but would be pretending to be her. Wow, this guy sounds like a dick. An irate Jones told Hardy I can imagine what she said. An irate Jones told Hardy that she'd do no such thing. The problem was she was now stuck in Florida without money to get home. At this point, beyond dangling the promise of a lot of money if she went along with it, Hardy also allegedly told her that he'd kill her and toss her body in the ocean if she refused to comply with his request. Again, let's just emphasize the fact that guy's a dick. Driving a hard bargain, Jones accepted his offer, and Hardy subsequently went about approaching a number of small Florida club owners claiming to represent Franklin. These owners were understandably unconvinced that the very young Hardy represented the Aretha Franklin, with some going so far as to laugh in his face. Changing tack somewhat, Hardy ultimately dressed Jones in the most diva-like attire that he could find and began bringing her to these meetings, with club owners leveraging her vague physical resemblance to Franklin and her spot-on singing imitation to help convince them. Amazingly, this gambit paid off, and Hardy was able to secure a string of gigs for Imitation Franklin, charging a fraction of the $20,000, about $160,000 today, per performance the real Franklin usually earned at the time. As to how Hardy passed off the rather sizable discount he was giving in order to make the shows affordable to the small club owners, he simply told them that Franklin was on vacation and was taking a few select gigs in clubs to earn some quick play money while vacationing. Doing her part at each show, Jones was able to convince the crowds that she was, in fact, Franklin, with her performances, something Hardy parlayed into more shows as news that Franklin was performing for a fraction of her usual fee spread amongst Florida club owners. Not wanting the gravy train to stop on rolling, Hardy naturally didn't give a dime to Jones lest she have the means to leave. To double down on this, he also took to locking her in a hotel room anytime he needed to leave her alone for a bit to go and book deals and the like. As for food, she would later recount he only gave her 2 hamburgers per day to eat. Sounds like he kinda kidnapped her. After fooling the smaller crowds, Hardy set his sights higher, specifically the Hi-Hat Club in Fort Myers. As he'd done with smaller clubs across Florida, he was able to convince the owner of the 1,400-seat venue, Clifford Hart, that Jones was Franklin, and booked the performance for $7,000, about $56,000 today. On the night of the performance, which was sold out, Hart began to suspect that something was amiss when he saw Jones up close and noticed that she didn't quite match up to the pictures of Franklin that he'd seen, a sentiment that was echoed by regulars in the club who'd seen the real Franklin perform. In fact, as Jones nervously shuffled towards the mic, murmurs reportedly spread in the crowd. Things changed, however, when Jones began to sing, with the atmosphere in the club completely shifting. At the end of the performance, Jones quietly thanked the crowd and was given a standing ovation. The ruse was only discovered when the real Aretha Franklin's legal team read glowing reviews of the show. They then contacted a Floridian prosecutor called Gus Musler and demanded the imposter be immediately arrested before she could perform again. Musler subsequently contacted a detective called Towles Bigelow and ordered him to make the arresting imposter his top priority. Bigelow and his partner Martin Stevens moved quickly and arrested Jones and Hardy as they were set up to perform at Acala's Club Valley. Upon being arrested, Jones told her story, which the hard-nosed detectives were initially hesitant to believe, reasoning that she was simply trying to shift the blame to Hardy. However, they ultimately changed their mind after getting the stories from both individuals and, among other things, noting that while Hardy had been found with several $1,000s on his person, Jones was penniless. Unable to afford legal representation, Jones asked to plead her case directly to the prosecutor, Mule, something most legal experts would perhaps advise against, but in this case, it all actually worked out. During their meeting, Mule also expressed doubt about the details of the case at first, but ultimately believed her story, stating, "She didn't have a red cent. She had 4 children at home and no way to get to them. We were thoroughly convinced that Vicki was forced into being Aretha Franklin. I wanted to protect this girl. It was obvious she was a victim." In the court itself, to further help her cause, beyond outlining what he believed had happened for the judge, Mule asked Jones to sing. To a rather stunned court audience and the judge, Jones sounded so much like Aretha Franklin that said judge decided to let her off, owing to the fact that while technically she had taken part in defrauding spectators at various performances, her actual performance was indistinguishable from Aretha Franklin. Thus, the people more or less got their money's worth, so no harm was done. Okay, but is that the law, Judgy? The case was dismissed, and Jones and Hardy, as it turned out, were allowed to go their merry ways. As for the whole quasi-kidnapping thing, yes, definitely. Hardy simply claimed there wasn't anybody standing over her with a gun and a knife. She wasn't forced to do anything. And about those hamburgers, we all ate hamburgers, not because we had to, but because they taste good. It's a fairly weak legal defense, but then the guy did get off. Mule didn't really buy it. Good. But after discussing the matter with Hardy's lawyer, Don Denson, he decided to let the matter drop. As to why he chose to let Hardy off so easy, he states Denson told him, "Gus, I'm representing Lavelle Hardy, and he's already been punished because he paid my fee. We pretty well cleaned him out." Okay, what? After convincing Mule that Denson had indeed milked Hardy for every dime he'd earned from the performances, and as Jones was now free of Hardy, Mule saw no reason to pursue further punishment so long as Hardy agreed to leave Florida promptly and not come back. Someone else's problem. As for Jones, she told reporters awaiting outside the courthouse after the ruling, "I know I can use a little training in singing jazz and the blues, but I feel I can go all the way. I don't believe there is such a word as can't. I've got my own bag. The way I feel is that people can buy Aretha for Aretha, and they can buy Vickie Jane for Vicki. It's going to be hard, but nothing's going to stop me from making it as a singer." Mule then doubled down on helping Jones, facilitating an introduction with Duke Ellington. Yes, that Duke Ellington. Personal note, no idea who Duke Ellington is. At the same time, she was in... Okay, I gotta look that up because that's like the Duke Ellington. He was an American composer. Alright, I guess he's super famous in America. At the same time, she was introduced to millionaire Ray Green, who gave her $500 on the spot, about $4,000 today, and set her up with a place to stay. He then booked her for what would end up being a sold-out tour with Duke Ellington, initially earning Jones $450 per performance, which within a few weeks was boosted to $1,500 a show, about $12,000 today. Jones used the money to support her young family and became something of a celebrity in her own right, appearing on the cover of the same magazines she had read religiously for their coverage of Franklin, including Jet. In fact, as her fame grew, it ironically emerged that someone in Virginia was impersonating Jones in performances. Said Jones of this, "She's stopped now, but I don't hold anything against her. I know how it was to be hungry, without any money, supporting a family." It'd be a bit hypocritical if she was like, "Suing you, Jones ultimately very abruptly gave up her career, with her star still rising, when she learned her mother, who took care of her 4 boys while Jones was touring, had been unable to handle them and sent them off to live with Jones's abusive ex-husband. Being the quality individual that he was, he told the boys their mother had abandoned them and was never coming back. When she heard all of this, she promptly went home and told her boys she wouldn't leave them again. She stuck to her word, giving up her dream and retiring from professional singing. She followed that up by earning a high school diploma, as that had been one of her other dreams. Her sons would later note while she didn't perform publicly anymore, she did frequently sing from them. She also kept a clipping of herself on the cover of Jet on the mantle to encourage them that no matter how big their dreams or how impossible it may seem, they could achieve theirs, as she briefly had hers. Jones ultimately lived to the age of 58. passing away in the year 2000. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, smash that thumbs up button below and do not forget to subscribe. Also, if you like the sort of asides that were in this video, just adding a little bit of my own flavor to the scripts here, well, you'll probably like business plays where, like, 90% of it is just me adding flavor. That might sound terrible to you. If it does, that's okay. Just don't click the link below. You'll be fine. And thank you for watching.